Her hands trembled, not from cold but from an old weariness. 62 years carried in fingers that never stopped, not on Sundays, not on holidays. The door closed behind her with a dry, definitive sound. No one said goodbye. No one looked back. Just a cardboard box with 3 old dresses, a faded photograph and an unsigned termination letter. She looked at the grand house one last time, the house she had cleaned for 40 years, and realized it had never been hers. Not even a little. Before we dive into this story, leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 10 and tell us which city you're tuning in from. May this moment bring reflection and emotion to your heart. Her name was Rosemary Miller, but no one ever called her by her full name. It was just Rose. Rose from the kitchen, Rose the cleaner, Rose who fixes things. She arrived at that house a young woman, 22 years old, with an infant daughter in her arms. The lady of the house at the time, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, had opened the door with a calculated smile and said she needed someone trustworthy. Trust. A beautiful word that Rose held on to like a promise. 40 years later, she discovered that trust doesn't pay the rent. The morning was cold when everything began to crumble. Rose had woken up with back pain, the kind that shoots up your spine and makes it hard to breathe properly. She was 62, but her body felt 80. Carrying heavy things, scrubbing floors on her knees, climbing up and down stairs dozens of times a day. All of it takes a toll. It takes a silent toll, like interest on a debt no one remembers taking out. She tried to get out of bed and felt her leg lock up. She tried again. Nothing. She lay there looking at the cracked ceiling of the small room in the back of the grand house, and for the first time in decades, she cried. It wasn't a cry of physical pain. It was a cry of fear. Fear of not being able to work anymore. Fear of no longer being useful, because Rose had learned early on that the poor are only valued as long as they serve. She wiped her tears with the corner of the thin sheet and with great effort dragged herself to the kitchen. Helena Vance, Mrs. Vance's daughter, was sitting at the table, engrossed in her phone, manicured nails, perfectly styled hair, expensive perfume filling the air. She didn't even lift her eyes when Rose limped in. "Good morning, Miss Helena," Rose said, her voice weak. Silence. "Miss Helena, I'm not feeling well today. I think I need to see a doctor." The woman sighed as if this were the greatest inconvenience in the world. "Rose, you always find an excuse. Every month it's something. Either a headache or dizziness or now this." Rose felt her chest tighten. "It's not an excuse, ma'am. I really am feeling it." Helena finally looked at her, but it wasn't a look of concern. It was a look of impatience. "We'll talk later. There's an important lunch here today, and I need you to take care of everything." And she went back to her phone. Conversation over. Rose prepared lunch. She made fluffy rice, seasoned beans, a hearty stew, salads, a savory side dish, and dessert. Everything as she always did, with care, even with the pain shooting up and down her spine, even feeling like she might faint at any moment. She served the table, washed the dishes, cleaned the kitchen. When she finally finished, it was late at night. She dragged herself to her room and collapsed onto the bed. She didn't even have the strength to take off her uniform. She fell asleep just like that, still dressed with the pain pounding in her back. The next day she could barely get up. She tried. She tried again, nothing, her legs wouldn't obey. That's when Helena walked into the room without knocking, with that expression of someone who had already decided everything. "Rose, we need to talk." The tone was dry, businesslike. Rose sat up in bed with difficulty, her heart already racing. "You know we've always treated you well here. You're part of the family." Family. Rose knew that word. It always came before something bad. "But we can see that you can't keep up with the pace anymore. You're getting old, Rose, and we need someone younger, more energetic." The world stopped. Rose looked at Helena and tried to find some trace of humanity on that face. She found none. "But I've worked here my whole life, ma'am. 40 years. I raised you and your siblings. I took care of your mother when she got sick. I never missed a day." Helena shrugged. "And we paid you for it. Now things have changed. You can collect your things and leave by tomorrow." Rose felt the ground disappear beneath her. "What about my rights? My retirement?" "You never officially registered my employment, ma'am." The woman crossed her arms. "You can resolve that with a lawyer. You started here without being registered. You knew that. Don't come asking for compensation now." That's how it was. 40 years summarized in a cardboard box and a closed door. Rose left that house with trembling legs, back pain, and a torn soul. She had nowhere to go. Her daughter had died years ago in a motorcycle accident. Friends? She never had time to make friends. Her life had always been that house, that kitchen, those stairs, that uniform. Now it was just her, the cardboard box, and a city that doesn't forgive those who grow old and poor. She walked aimlessly through the streets. The sun beat down on her head. Her legs ached. The box weighed more than it should. She sat down in a park under a dry tree and stayed there watching the movement. People rushing by in cars, on motorcycles, talking on cell phones, laughing, living. No one saw her, invisible as she had always been. Rose closed her eyes and tried to remember when she had been happy. It took a while. The memory came slowly. Her little daughter laughing in her lap on a Sunday afternoon. Just that, one afternoon. 40 years and only one afternoon to remember. That's when a voice broke her reverie. "Miss Rose?" She opened her eyes, confused. A young man in his early 30s stood in front of her, with an expression of surprise and something that looked like affection. "Miss Rose, don't you remember me?" Rose looked closely. The face was familiar but distant, like an old photograph. "It's me, Mikey. You used to take care of me when I was a child." The memory came back like a slap. Michael, the boy who appeared at the Vance's house every summer, the son of a distant cousin of Mrs. Vance, a thin, shy boy who would sit for hours in the corner of the kitchen, talking to her while she peeled potatoes. Michael, who brought drawings to show her, who laughed at the stories she told, who called her Aunt Rose, the only one who looked at her like a person. Mikey, her voice was choked up. He knelt in front of her, concerned. "What happened, Miss Rose? Why are you out here on the street?" Rose tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. Only tears. Michael looked at the cardboard box, her swollen feet, her tired face. He understood everything without needing to ask. "Come with me," he said, picking up the box. "You're not staying here." Rose tried to protest, to say she didn't want to be a bother, but he was already helping her up, holding her arm carefully, as if she were made of glass. And perhaps she was. After 40 years of carrying the weight of the world, Rose was too fragile to even carry herself. Michael lived in a small apartment, 2 rooms in an old but clean building. It wasn't luxury, but it had respect. He helped Rose sit on the sofa, brought her water, then a hot tea. "Oh, you'll stay here until you're better," he said, leaving no room for discussion. Rose looked at him, incredulous. "But I can't accept this, my son. You barely even know me." Michael smiled, that boyish smile she remembered. "I don't know you?" "You taught me how to tie my shoes. You comforted me when my mom forgot to pick me up. You secretly gave me food when I came hungry. You know me, Miss Rose, and I know you." That night, lying on a soft mattress for the first time in years, Rose cried again. But it was different. It wasn't the cry of abandonment. It was the cry of someone who is seen, of someone who is remembered, of someone who matters. Michael had warmed up soup, had set aside a clean blanket, had talked to her as if she were a real person. And Rose realized that for 40 years she had forgotten what it was like to be treated as a person. She had become a function. Rose the cleaner. Rose the problem solver. Never Rose who feels, Rose who tires, Rose who hurts. The following days were of forced rest. Michael insisted she see a doctor. He took a day off work, took her to the community clinic, waited for hours in line, held her hand during the exams. The diagnosis was heavy. A herniated disc, arthritis, high blood pressure, anemia. 40 years of non-stop work, without ergonomics, without care. Her body demanded its toll all at once. The doctor prescribed medication, physical therapy, and rest. "You need to take care of yourself. The body has its limits," Rose almost laughed. "Limits? The poor have no limits. The poor work until they drop." But now she had fallen. And for the first time, someone was there to pick her up. Michael bought her medications, adjusted her schedule, cooked meals, took care of her. "You don't have to do this, my son," Rose said every day. "Yes, I do," he replied. "You did it for me when I was a child and no one cared about me. Now it's my turn." And it was true. Michael had grown up in a dysfunctional family, an absent mother, an unknown father, always passed from relative to relative. The only constant in his childhood had been Rose, the woman who listened to him, who saved him a piece of cake, who wiped away his tears when no one else saw. Gradually, Rose began to improve. The pain subsided. Her body, accustomed to being ignored, began to respond to rest and care. She helped Michael around the house, but he wouldn't let her overexert herself. "Just the basics, Ms. Rose, no scrubbing floors," she smiled. It was strange to be cared for. After a lifetime of caring for others, being cared for felt wrong, almost a betrayal. But it was good. It was good to feel that someone cared. That someone noticed if she was well or unwell. That someone asked, "Did you have lunch? Did you take your medicine? Are you in pain?" One afternoon, while Michael was at work and Rose was alone in the apartment, she decided to tidy up his things. It wasn't work. It was affection. She folded clothes, organized the bookshelf, wiped down the furniture. That's when she found a box under the bed. She wasn't going to touch it, but the lid was open and she saw drawings. Many drawings. They were old from a child, made with colored pencils and crayons. She recognized them instantly. They were the drawings Michael used to make as a boy, back in the grand house while she peeled vegetables. He had kept them. All of them. She sat on the bed with the drawings in her lap and read the dedications written in clumsy child's handwriting. "To Aunt Rose, who is nice. To Aunt Rose, who makes cake. Aunt Rose is my friend." Rose ran her hand over the yellowed papers, feeling the weight of each word. 40 years in the grand house, and no one had ever kept anything of hers. No photos, no souvenirs, no thanks. But that boy, whom she had cared for only a few summers, had kept everything. He had remembered. When Michael arrived home from work, he found Rose crying, the drawings spread on the bed. He understood immediately. He sat next to her in silence. "So you changed my life, Ms. Rose," he said after a while. "I was a lost boy. Nobody wanted me around. I thought I wasn't worth anything. Then you treated me with kindness. You listened to me. You made me feel important. I never forgot that." "I will never forget." Rose looked at him, at the man that boy had become, and felt a pride she had never felt before. It wasn't the pride of an employer, nor of material achievement. It was the pride of knowing that, amidst 40 years of invisibility, she had mattered to someone. She had left her mark. She had been remembered. "I'm the one who should thank you, my son," she said, her voice trembling. "You saved me. When I thought I had nothing left, you appeared." He smiled and hugged her. And in that embrace was everything Rose never had in the grand house: human warmth, recognition, true love. Weeks passed, and Rose grew stronger. Her back pain improved. Her body responded to physical therapy. Her blood pressure stabilized. Michael found her a light part-time job at a neighborhood daycare. Nothing strenuous, just caring for children, telling stories, helping with snack time. Rose accepted. And it was there, among children, that she was reborn. The children adored her. They called her Grandma Rose. They ran to hug her when they arrived. They asked to be held. They wanted to hear her stories. Aunt Rose, for the first time in decades, felt loved for who she was, not for what she did. One afternoon, one of the daycare teachers commented, "Ms. Rose, you have a gift with children. They're so calm around you. Have you ever thought about studying to be an educational assistant?" Rose was speechless. Study? She who had barely finished elementary school? Who never had time for anything but work? "I'm too old for that, dear," she replied. But the teacher insisted. "Age doesn't matter, Ms. Rose. It's never too late to start over." That conversation kept nagging at her. Start over. Could she really? Could she, after everything, have a life of her own? She talked to Michael. He was radiant. "Of course you can. I'll help you. We'll study together." And so at 63, Rose went back to school. Michael bought books, printed handouts, sat with her every day after work. It was difficult. Her tired brain, her blurry vision, the letters dancing on the page. But she persisted. Because for the first time she had a reason to persist. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about living. While Rose was rebuilding her life, the family that had discarded her faced their own demons. Helena, who had dismissed her with such coldness, was deeply in debt. Her husband's business had failed. Their credit cards were maxed out. The bank threatened to repossess their house. The grand house, with its expensive chandeliers and imported furniture, was about to go up for auction. Helena tried everything. She borrowed money, sold jewelry, cut expenses, but it wasn't enough. The fall was swift, brutal, humiliating. Helena's children, the same ones Rose had cared for as babies, whom she had rocked, whom she had fed, didn't help at all. One lived out of state, the other was too busy with his own life. No one cared. Helena found herself alone, for the first time understanding what abandonment felt like. She tried to go back to find Rose, but no one knew where she was. She had vanished, as if she had never existed, and perhaps she never had. For Helena, Rose was always just a function, never a person. Desperation hit when the bank notified them of eviction. Helena would have to leave the house in 30 days. The house where she grew up, where she raised her children, where Rose had spent 40 years cleaning every corner. Now it was just an empty shell, full of memories no one would want. Helena cried. She cried with anger, with shame, with fear. She cried alone because she had no one. Ironic. She had spent her life surrounded by people, by staff, by employees, and in her downfall, she was utterly alone. It was the neighbor who told them. An elderly man, who had always been kind to Rose, who would stop to chat with her on the sidewalk. He found Michael, got the address through acquaintances, and knocked on the apartment door. "I came to talk about Helena," he said, embarrassed. "The bank is taking her house. She's out on the street." Rose heard everything from her room. She felt a pang in her chest. It wasn't pity for her former employer. It was pity for the situation. For the wheel that turns and spares no one. Michael looked at her, waiting for a reaction. Rose remained silent. What should she feel? Relief? Anger? Satisfaction? She felt none of that. She felt weariness. Weariness from carrying the pain of others for so long. "Do you want to go there?" Michael asked cautiously. Rose shook her head. "For what? To hear a rehearsed apology? To be used again?" He agreed. But the neighbor insisted. "She needs help, Ms. Rose. She's sick, not eating properly." Rose took a deep breath. 40 years of work don't just disappear. The house, no matter how bad the memories, still echoed inside her. The next day, against all advice, Rose went to the grand house. Michael wanted to go with her, but she asked to go alone. "I need to close this chapter on my own terms," she said. The house looked different. The garden was neglected, the paint peeling, the gate rusty. Rose pushed the gate open and entered. Every step was a memory. The porch where she did laundry, the living room window she cleaned every week, the kitchen door she walked through every day before sunrise. She knocked on the door. No one answered. She pushed gently. It was open. She entered. The house smelled of mildew, abandonment, stagnant time. She found Helena sitting in the living room, amidst boxes and covered furniture, her face swollen from crying. When she saw Rose, Helena didn't know what to do. Stand up, hug her, ask for forgiveness? She remained paralyzed. Rose looked at her, at the woman who had once been her employer, her madam, her boss. Now she was just a broken person like any other. "I heard you need help," Rose said, her voice firm. Helena began to cry. "Rose, I was horrible to you. I know, I have no excuse. I treated you as if you were nothing." Rose didn't reply. She just stood there observing. Helena continued. "I'm losing everything. The house, my life, everything. And I have no one. The kids are gone. My husband left me. My friends turned their backs. And I kept thinking, I did this to you. I threw you out on the street when you needed me most. And now I'm paying for it." Silence. Rose slowly approached and sat on a chair facing Helena. "Do you think I came here to hear an apology?" Helena looked up, confused. "Then why?" Rose took a deep breath. "Because I needed to look at you and understand that I don't want to be like you." Helena stopped crying. "For 40 years I erased myself, thinking that if I was helpful enough I would be seen. But I never was, and when I needed you, you discarded me. But do you know what I learned? I learned that life comes full circle, and that you reap what you sow." Helena lowered her head. "I deserve all this." "I know," Rose stood up. "I didn't come here to judge you. I came to close a chapter. You gave me work, you paid me, that's true. But you never gave me respect. You never truly saw me. And now I don't need you to see me anymore, because I've learned to see myself." She walked to the door, paused, and turned. "Good luck, Helena, truly. I hope you learn what I learned, that life isn't measured by what we have, but by what we do for others." She left that house for the last time. The gate creaked behind her, a sound that echoed like a final closing. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. That part of her life was over. It was time to live what had begun with Michael. with the daycare children, with her studies, with the days when she woke up and someone asked, "Good morning, Ms. Rose. How did you sleep?" It was time to live as a person, not as a function. The following months were a transformation. Rose completed her educational assistant course. She passed with flying colors. Michael threw a surprise party in the apartment, invited the neighbors, the daycare teachers, the children. Everyone sang congratulations, not for her birthday, but for her achievement. Rose, with a diploma in her hand, cried, not tears of sadness, but of pride. Pride in herself, for starting over, for believing that it was still possible. The daycare offered her a permanent contract with official employment, benefits. For the first time in her life, Rose would have a guaranteed retirement. She would have vacations. She would have respect printed on paper. She signed the contract with trembling hands, not from old age, but from emotion. "Congratulations, Ms. Rose," said the director. "You deserve it. Deserve." A word Rose had never heard directed at her. It had always been thank you. Can you do this? So can you handle it? Never you deserve it. Never congratulations, never well done. Michael, seeing her flourish, decided it was time to tell her something he had been holding on to for a while. One night after dinner, he sat with her in the living room. "Ms. Rose, there's something I want to do for you." Rose looked at him, curious. He took a deep breath. "I spoke with a lawyer. We can sue Helena's family. 40 years without official employment, without benefits, without vacations. You're entitled to compensation. And I want to help you with that." Rose was silent. Sue, fight in court. Demand what was hers. Part of her wanted to. She wanted to see Helena answer for everything. She wanted the money she never received. She wanted the justice she never had. But another part was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of looking back. "I don't know, my son," she said. "I don't know if I want to spend my energy on that. I just want peace." Michael understood. "Then we'll let it go. But if you change your mind, I'm here." Peace, however, was interrupted weeks later. Helena appeared at the daycare. Thin, aged, without her former sparkle. She asked to speak with Rose. The teachers wanted to stop her, but Rose said it was okay. They talked in the courtyard, away from the children. Helena was different. Humble, broken, genuine. "I came to truly apologize," she began. "Not because I want something. Not because I'm using you. But because I need to. I need you to know that I was wrong. That I was inhuman. And that I have no excuse." Rose listened. She didn't interrupt. When Helena finished, there were tears in her eyes. Rose took a deep breath. "I accept your apology, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to live without this burden." Helena seemed relieved, but Rose continued. "But that doesn't erase what you did. It doesn't give back 40 years. It doesn't pay what you owe. I forgive because it's better for me. But you will have to live with what you did, and you will have to learn to be better." Helena nodded, swallowing her words. "I know, and I will try." Rose stood up. "Good luck, Helena." This time there was no anger in her voice, no resentment, only weariness, and perhaps a little pity, because Rose understood that true poverty isn't a lack of money. It's a lack of humanity. And in that aspect, Helena had always been poorer than her. Life went on. Rose prospered at the daycare, loved by the children, respected by her colleagues. Michael got a promotion at work, found a bigger apartment, and invited Rose to live with him. She hesitated, but he insisted. "You're my family, Ms. Rose. You always have been." And it was true. Blood doesn't define family. Affection does. Presence does. Care does. In the new apartment, Rose had a room of her own, for the first time in her life. A room with a large window, natural light, pretty curtains. Michael painted the walls yellow, her favorite color. He bought her a new wardrobe, a comfortable bed, a bedside lamp. "This is your little corner, Ms. Rose, your space." She looked at the room and couldn't hold back her tears. 63 years old, and it was the first time she had a space that was entirely hers. Gradually, other elderly neighbors began to seek out Rose. They wanted to talk, ask for advice, confide. She became a role model. The woman who started over, who didn't give up, who turned the page. Rose received them with kindness, offered coffee, listened. Many were in the same situation she had been in, discarded, forgotten, invisible. She understood. She knew what it was like to be treated like old furniture, and now she could help. Michael suggested she start a support group, a space where seniors could gather, talk, share experiences. Rose loved the idea. They used the daycare's meeting room on Saturday mornings. They started with 5 people. In 2 months, there were 20. Rose coordinated, spoke about rights, about dignity, about new beginnings. And every story she heard reinforced what she already knew. Aging in this country, being poor, meant being invisible. But together they could change that. The group grew. It became a social project. The city council offered support, allocated funds, provided a larger space. Rose became a community leader, without ever planning to. She just wanted to help, but she ended up transforming lives. Seniors who had been depressed, isolated, started smiling again. They started believing that they still had value. Rose taught what she had learned. We are not what was done to us. We are what we do with what was done to us. One afternoon, during a group meeting, a woman raised her hand. She was shy, soft-spoken, with downcast eyes. "Ms. Rose, I wanted to thank you. Before coming here, I thought my life was over. My children don't speak to me. I live alone with no one. But here I found family. I found purpose, and that saved me." The room applauded. Rose smiled, but inside she was moved, because she understood. She had lived it. And now she could help others not to live it. Helena heard about the project. She asked to visit. Rose hesitated but allowed it. Helena arrived with her head bowed, asked permission, and sat at the back of the room. She listened to everything. She saw seniors sharing their pain, their triumphs, their dreams. She saw Rose, the woman she had discarded, leading with love and wisdom. In the end, Helena approached. "Can I speak?" Rose nodded. Helena looked at the group. "I'm Helena, and I made one of the worst mistakes of my life. I mistreated someone who served me with loyalty. I devalued someone who loved me unconditionally. And today I'm here not to ask for forgiveness again, but to learn, to try to be better." The group fell silent. Some looked with distrust, others with curiosity. Rose spoke. "No one here is perfect. We've all made mistakes. The important thing is to acknowledge them, learn and change. If you want to be a part of this, you are welcome. But it has to be from the heart." Helena nodded, her eyes welling up. "It's from the heart, I swear." And that's how Helena began to attend the group, at first shy, ashamed, but little by little she opened up, shared, helped. Months later, Helena sold what was left of her possessions, paid off her debts, and rented a simple apartment. She found a job as a receptionist at a clinic. A simple life, a modest salary, but dignified. She changed. Not overnight, but she changed. She learned to value the basics. A plate of food, a sincere good morning, a warm hug. She learned that luxury isn't having, it's being. And that respect isn't bought, it's earned. Rose observed everything with a mixture of surprise and hope. She hadn't expected Helena to change, but she did. And that proved something Rose had always believed. People can change. Not everyone, not always, but they can. It depends on the pain. It depends on humility. It depends on looking in the mirror and accepting what you see. Helena looked. And she didn't like it. And she decided to be different. Time passed and Rose's project became a reference in the city. Local newspapers ran stories, TV came to film. Politicians appeared for photo ops. Rose hated that part, the exposure, the spotlights. "I just want to help, not become a celebrity," she would say. But Michael insisted it was important. "Ms. Rose, you're showing that seniors have value. This is big. It needs to be publicized." She yielded, but always with discomfort. She never wanted fame. She wanted peace. In one of those interviews, a journalist asked, "Ms. Rose, after everything you've been through, what's the biggest lesson you've learned?" Rose thought. The answer came slowly but firmly. "I learned that life doesn't end when someone discards you. It ends when you discard yourself. And I learned that you're never too old to start over. It's never too late to be happy. It's never too late to be seen." The journalist smiled, moved. "What a beautiful message." Rose shrugged. "It's not a message. It's life." The report aired on local TV. It went viral on social media. Messages started pouring in. People from all over the country wanting to know how to create similar projects, how to help seniors, how to make a difference. Rose was startled by the scale, but Michael helped organize everything. They created a website, made materials available, gave guidance. One woman's project turned into a movement. And all because Rose, even at rock bottom, decided she still had something to give. Helena, seeing all this impact, asked to speak with Rose in private. They met at a coffee shop, away from the spotlights. Helena was different, lighter, more human. "Rose, I wanted to thank you for accepting me back, for giving me a chance to change." Rose took a sip of her coffee. "I didn't give you a chance, Helena. You gave yourself one. I just didn't stop you." Helena smiled. "Either way, thank you. You taught me more in 6 months than I learned in 60 years. Rose looked out the window, watching the city move outside. "Do you know what I learned from all this, Helena?" The woman waited. "I learned that time heals, but it doesn't erase. I forgave you, but I'll never forget. And that's okay, because memory serves to keep us from repeating mistakes, to keep us from forgetting who we were and who we want to be." Helena nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I won't forget either. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make amends." Months turned into years. Rose, now 65, was healthy, active, fulfilled. The project grew, helping hundreds of seniors, changing lives. Michael got married, had a child, a beautiful girl they named Mary Rose. Rose became a grandmother by heart, a babysitter in her spare time, a storyteller. The girl adored her. "Grandma Rose, tell me again how you went back to school." And Rose would tell the story with pride, with emotion, with truth. Helena continued in the group, helping, learning, changing. She never returned to being the arrogant woman she was before. She became an active volunteer, coordinated some activities, gave talks about her own mistakes. "I was that person you don't want to be," she would tell new groups. "I was arrogant, I was selfish, I was cruel, and I lost everything. Not the money, that's the least of it. I lost my humanity, and it was Rose who taught me to get it back." It was strange to hear that, but it was true. One rainy afternoon, Rose was alone at home when the doorbell rang. It was a young woman, around 30, with a child in her arms. "Miss Rose, my name is Lucy, I'm Helena's niece. She told me about you, and I came here because I need help." Rose opened the door. "Come in, dear. Come in." The young woman entered, nervous, and began to cry. "I'm in the same situation you were. I worked for years off the books, was fired while pregnant. I'm out of money, homeless, nothing." Rose sat with her, made tea, listened to her story. It was outrageous but familiar. So many women went through this every day in silence, not knowing they had rights that they could fight. "You're not alone, dear. We're going to help you." And she did. She contacted the lawyer who supported the project, found temporary shelter, food, clothes for the child. Lucy, moved, held Rose's hand. "Thank you so much. You're an angel." Rose smiled. "I'm no angel. I'm just someone who understands, and who doesn't want others to go through what I went through." Lucy's struggle was long. Labor lawsuit, hearings, documents. But in the end, she won. She received everything she was entitled to: severance pay, vacation pay, bonuses, compensation. With the money, she was able to rent a small house, buy necessities, and return to work with dignity. And she never forgot who helped her. She returned to the project as a volunteer, helping other women in the same situation. The cycle closed. Rose helped, and those who were helped came back to help. That's how the world should work. Michael, seeing all this, commented one night, "Ms. Rose, have you ever thought that you've saved hundreds of lives? That you've changed an entire city?" Rose shook her head. "I haven't saved anyone, my son. I just showed them it's possible. The rest each person does for themselves." But he insisted, "No, Miss Rose, you are an example. You are an inspiration, and that's worth more than any money." Rose smiled. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was stronger than she thought. Maybe that woman who was discarded had in fact been reborn. One Sunday morning, Rose woke up early, made coffee, and sat on the apartment balcony. The city slowly woke up, birds sang, the sun rose timidly. She looked at her own hands, the hands that had carried so much, that had cleaned so much, that had worked so much. Now they were rested, cared for, free. She thought about everything she had lived through. The 40 years of invisibility, the day she was discarded, the meeting with Michael, the new beginning, the struggle, the victory. She thought of Helena, who changed, of Lucy, who saved herself, of the hundreds of seniors who found hope, of Mary Rose, who grew up hearing stories of overcoming adversity. She thought of everything and felt a peace she had never felt before. It wasn't the peace of someone who won. It was the peace of someone who understood. Understood that life comes full circle, that nothing lasts forever, that pain also passes, and that what matters is not how much we suffer, but how much we resist. Michael joined her on the balcony with his daughter in his lap. "Good morning, Miss Rose," she smiled. "Good morning, my son." Mary Rose extended her little arms. "Grandma Rose." She picked up the girl, hugged her tight, felt her heart beat strongly. There was the answer. There was the meaning. It wasn't in the grand houses, in the wealthy employers, in the 40 years of unrecognized work. The meaning was there, in that embrace, in that smile, in that love that didn't need to be earned. It was given, freely, as it should be. Months later, Rose received an unexpected invitation. The city council wanted to honor her, to give her a medal of merit, to recognize her social work. Rose laughed. A medal for what? But Michael and the others insisted. "It's important, Miss Rose. It's recognition. It's to show that people like you matter." She yielded. She went to the ceremony, embarrassed in a simple dress, without makeup, without luxury. And her name was called. The entire auditorium stood up and applauded. They applauded for minutes. Rose on stage looked at the audience and saw hundreds of faces. Faces she had helped directly or indirectly. In her speech, she was brief. "I am not a hero. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just did what anyone should do. Care for others. Respect others. See others. For 40 years I was invisible. I worked, I dedicated myself, I erased myself, and still I was discarded. But I learned that being discarded is not the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of a new story. And my new story is this: to help those who were invisible like me, because no one deserves to be forgotten. No one deserves to be thrown away. And as long as I have breath, I will fight to make sure that doesn't happen anymore." The audience gave a standing ovation. Rose came down from the stage, trembling, emotional. Helena was there in the back rows, also applauding, crying. They looked at each other from a distance. They didn't need to speak. The look said it all. Forgiveness, gratitude, a new beginning. Years ago they were employer and employee. Now they were two women who understood in the most painful way that life has no hierarchy. It has humanity, and without humanity nothing matters. Life continued its rhythm. Rose remained involved with the project, now with the support of various institutions. The movement grew, became an NGO, gained its own headquarters, a fixed team. Michael became the executive director. Helena was a volunteer coordinator. Lucy handled the legal aspects. Everything organized, professional, but without losing its essence, affection. Because Rose never let it become a machine. People aren't numbers. People are feelings. And we work with feelings. One afternoon, Rose was organizing donations when she felt dizzy. She sat down, took a deep breath, tried to calm herself. But the dizziness didn't pass. Michael called an ambulance. At the hospital, the tests showed irregular blood pressure, extreme fatigue, her body sounding an alarm. "You need to slow down, ma'am," the doctor said. "Your body has already given you signs. Now it's time to listen." Rose agreed, but deep down she knew she wouldn't stop. Not yet, she had too much to do. But the body doesn't obey will. Days later, another crisis, this time more serious. Hospitalization, medication, forced rest. Michael stayed by her side the whole time. "You need to take care of yourself, Ms. Rose. It's no good helping others if you destroy yourself." She knew he was right. But it was difficult. Difficult to stop after a lifetime of constant movement. Difficult to rest when there was still so much to do. The doctor was clear. "Miss Rose, you are 65 years old and have the body of an 80-year-old. This is not normal. You pushed yourself too hard, worked too much, negated yourself too much. It's time to take care of yourself, truly." Rose listened, pensive. Perhaps it was time. Perhaps she had given enough. Perhaps now it was permissible to live for herself without guilt. She accepted. She reduced her workload at the project, passed on responsibilities, delegated, and she began to live slowly. In the following months, Rose did things she had never done. She went to the movies. She went to the park. She sat on a bench and spent hours just looking at the lake, doing nothing. She visited museums. She ate in restaurants. She bought new clothes. Simple things that for most people were routine, but for her were new. 65 years old, and it was the first time she lived without a function, without having to serve, care, solve. It was just Rose, just her. And that was both liberating and terrifying at the same time. Michael and Mary Rose accompanied her whenever they could. The girl, now 4 years old, was an inseparable companion. "Grandma Rose, why are we just standing here?" "Because we can, dear." Because we can, and it was true. For the first time, Rose could simply exist, without justification, without productivity, without guilt, just exist. And that, she discovered, was revolutionary. Helena, who now led a large part of the project, visited Rose weekly. She brought flowers, cakes, and long conversations. They became friends. Not in the usual way, but in the most possible way. Friends who shared pain, who learned together, who grew together. Funny how life turns, isn't it, Rose? It is, Helena. Life doesn't forgive, but it also doesn't forget those who deserve a second chance. Helena smiled. Thank you for giving me mine. One afternoon, Rose received an unexpected letter. It was from a state university, inviting her to give a lecture on aging and dignity. She laughed. Me? Give a lecture at a university? But Michael encouraged her. Of course, Miss Rose. You have more life experience than any professor. She accepted. On the day, she arrived nervous, her hands trembling. But when she began to speak, the words flowed. She told her story, unfiltered, unembellished. She told of the pain, the humiliation, the new beginning, the victory. The audience, full of young university students, remained silent. In the end, long emotional applause. Several students approached, thanked her, asked for advice. One girl cried, "My grandmother went through something similar, and I never appreciated her. Now I understand." Rose hugged the girl. There's still time to appreciate her. Go hug her, tell her you love her. Don't wait for her to die to miss her. The lecture led to other invitations. Rose began to be called to schools, churches, associations, always with the same message: respect the elderly. Value those who came before. Learn that aging is not a shame. It's an achievement. And that everyone, if lucky, will grow old. The question is, do you want to grow old invisible, or do you want to grow old seen? Years passed. Rose, now 70, was fragile but firm. The project continued strong, helping thousands. Michael fully took over, but always consulted her. Ms. Rose is the soul of this place. Without her, none of this would exist. Helena, 75, remained an active volunteer. She had become a close friend of Rose, a confidant, a partner. Who would have thought, Rose? Us side by side after everything. Indeed, life has a way of doing that. One morning, Rose woke up tired. A different kind of tiredness, deep, of someone who had given all she could. She called Michael. "My son, I'm tired. I think my time is coming." He held her hand. "Don't say that, Miss Rose." She smiled. "It's not sadness. It's acceptance. I've lived everything I had to live. I suffered, I fought, I won, I loved. Now I'm at peace," he cried. "You are the strongest person I know." Rose spent her last months at home, surrounded by affection. Mary Rose, now 10, read to her every night. Helena visited every day. Lucy brought flowers. The seniors from the project sent letters, messages, videos, all thanking her, all declaring their love. Rose read everything, moved. "I didn't know I mattered so much to so many people." Michael held her hand. "You always mattered, Miss Rose. Always." On an autumn afternoon, with the sun streaming through the window, Rose closed her eyes for the last time. She was in Michael's arms, with Mary Rose holding her other hand, Helena sitting at the foot of the bed. There was no pain, no fear, only peace. The same peace she found after starting over. The peace of someone who lived with dignity, who loved and was loved, who left her mark. The wake was simple, as she requested. But the line of people was enormous. Hundreds of people. Seniors she had helped. Children she had cared for. Volunteers she had inspired. All crying, all thanking her. Michael, standing next to the coffin, looked at it all and understood. Rose had no fortune, no fame, no power. But she had something greater. She had love. And love, in the end, is the only thing that remains. Helena, crying, approached the coffin. She placed a white rose on top. "Thank you, Rose, for everything. For teaching me to be human. For giving me a second chance. For showing me that life doesn't end when you fall. It ends when you give up. And you never gave up. You fought, you won. And you left a legacy that no one will forget." The burial was accompanied by a beautiful hymn. Mary Rose, through tears, read a letter. "Grandma Rose, you weren't my grandma by blood, but you were my grandma by heart. You taught me that family isn't who you're born with, but who stays with you. You taught me that love isn't bought, it's given. And you taught me that life can hurt, but it can also be beautiful. Thank you for being my grandma. Thank you for being an example. "Thank you for being you." Michael, as the coffin was lowered, whispered, "Rest, Miss Rose, you deserve it." And it was true. After a lifetime of work, struggle, pain, and triumph, Rose finally rested. But her story didn't end. It continued in every senior the project helped, in every life she transformed, in every person who heard her story and decided to be better. Months later, the NGO inaugurated a new headquarters, large, modern, well-equipped. In the entrance hall, a bronze plaque, the Rosemary Miller Institute, because no one deserves to be forgotten. Below it, a photo of her smiling with that simple, human, genuine smile. Michael, unveiling the plaque, cried, "This is for you, Miss Rose, for everything you were, for everything you did, for everything you left behind." Helena, beside him, touched the plaque with affection. "She changed my life. She changed the lives of many people. And she will continue to change them forever." And it was true, because some people don't die. They live forever in every gesture of those they touched. Rose had no fortune, no luxury, no recognition for 40 years. But in the end, she had what matters. She had love. She had respect. She had memory. Rose's story spread. It became a book, a documentary, an inspiration. Schools used it as an example. Universities studied it as a case of overcoming adversity. And in every corner of the country, someone heard her story and thought, "If she could do it, I can too." And that was the greatest legacy. Not the money she didn't have, not the comfort she never knew, but the hope she planted. The hope that it's possible to start over, that it's never too late. That life can surprise you. Mary Rose grew up hearing stories from her grandmother. She decided to follow in her footsteps. She became a social worker, dedicating her life to helping seniors. She married, had children, and told them about the great-grandmother they never met, but who they carried in their hearts. She wasn't rich, she wasn't famous, but she was giant. Because a person's greatness isn't measured by what they have, but by what they give. Michael grew old directing the Institute. He never remarried, saying he didn't need to. "I already have my family. Ms. Rose gave me that." He worked until his last days, always with her photo on his desk, always remembering the lessons she taught him. And when he finally passed away at 80, he asked to be buried next to her. "I want to be near the one who saved me." Helena lived until she was 85. She spent the last 20 years of her life atoning, helping, serving. She never again became the arrogant woman she was before. She died peacefully, surrounded by loved ones. And at her memorial, someone said, "She made many mistakes, but she also got many things right." In the end, what matters is that she changed. And she really did change. Because Rose showed that people can change, that it's never too late to be better. Life went on. The Institute continued. Generations passed, but Rose's story remained. It remained as an example. It remained as inspiration. It remained as proof that human beings, even when discarded, even when humiliated, even when invisible, can rise. They can start over. They can win. Not with money, not with power, but with dignity, with love, with humanity. And today, decades later, when someone asks, "Who was Rosemary Miller?" the answer is simple. She was the woman who proved that aging with dignity is a right, not a privilege. She was the woman who showed that being discarded is not the end. It's the beginning. She was the woman who lived 70 years as invisible and died being seen by thousands. She was the woman who transformed pain into love and love into a legacy. Because in the end, what remains is not what we have. It's what we do. And Rose did a lot. She did more than many who had everything. She did it with little, but she did it with heart. And that in the end is what matters. It's what lasts. It's what echoes. And in every senior who is respected today, in every employee who has rights today, in every person who is seen today, there is a piece of Rose. There is her struggle. There is her victory. There is her story. A story that shouldn't have happened, but that did. And because it happened, it changed the world. It changed it slowly, quietly, without spotlights. But it changed it, because that's how the world changes, not with grand gestures, but with small acts of love, of resistance, of humanity. Rose didn't save the world, but she saved worlds. Individual worlds, unique lives, broken hearts. And in saving each one, she saved the whole. And if today you read this story and felt something, it's because Rose still lives. She lives in every tear of yours, in every reflection of yours, in every decision of yours to be better, because stories like hers are not for entertainment. They are for transformation. They are to remind us that we are human, that we have to look out for others, that we have to value those who came before, that we have to respect those who grow old, because all of us, if we're lucky, will grow old. And when that day comes, the question won't be how much you have. It will be how much you gave, how much you loved, how much you left behind. And if the answer is a lot, you lived well. You lived like Rose, with dignity, with love, with humanity. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe. Stories like this deserve to be remembered.